If you've ever felt like your prayers bounce off the ceiling, if you've ever wondered why the silence feels so deafening when you cry out to God, it's not because he was silent, it's because you were never taught how Jesus actually prayed. The church didn't just misunderstand prayer, they completely inverted it, flipped it upside down. The way Jesus prayed was so radical, so threatening to religious control, that if you truly understood it, you'd never need their buildings, their rituals, their permission again. And that's exactly why they buried it. Stay with me. In the next 20 minutes, you won't just learn about prayer, you will be initiated into the hidden way. The way that transforms you from a beggar at heaven's door into the very answer you've been seeking. But I need to warn you, this isn't Sunday school theology. What you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about communicating with the divine. 7 revelations are about to unfold. First, why your prayers don't work the way you were taught, and the lie that keeps you powerless. Second, the secret place Jesus spoke of that isn't where you think it is. Third, why Jesus prayed before miracles, not after them. Fourth, the one thing Jesus did that almost nobody speaks of today. Fifth, what it really means to become the prayer. Sixth, why this teaching was so dangerous it had to be hidden. And seventh, the activation that will change how you commune with God forever. But first, why does prayer so often feel like shouting into the void? You know that feeling. The desperate prayer in the dark of night when everything is falling apart. The bargaining with God when the diagnosis comes back. The endless repetition of words that seem to dissolve into nothing. You've been there. We all have. Kneeling beside a hospital bed, whispering please until your throat went raw. Standing in an empty house after they walked away, begging God to bring them back. Lying awake at 3 a.m., reciting every Bible verse you could remember, hoping one of them would finally unlock heaven's door. You were told to repeat the right phrases, to beg with the proper humility, to bargain your behavior for God's favor. Say your Hail Marys, recite your Psalms, speak in tongues, claim your promises, and still, despite your sincerity, despite your tears, despite following every religious formula, you felt unheard, unseen, abandoned. But Jesus saw this coming 2,000 years ago. He said, "Do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think they will be heard for their many words." Empty phrases, the very foundation of what most churches call prayer. Think about that. Jesus specifically warned against the kind of repetitive, wordy prayer that fills most churches today. He called it empty, powerless. The way of the Gentiles, those who didn't understand the true nature of divine communion. Here's the first revelation they never told you. Prayer is not repetition. Prayer is not petition. Prayer is not performance for an absent God who needs to be convinced to love you. Prayer is a state of being. Right now, before we go any deeper, I want you to do something. Remember one specific time you prayed desperately and felt nothing but silence. Don't just think about it, feel it again. The desperation, the emptiness afterward, the wondering if God even exists. Hold that memory, don't push it away. By the end of this teaching, you'll see that moment completely differently. You'll understand that what felt like abandonment was actually an invitation. Because if prayer isn't repetition, if it isn't petition, if it isn't the religious performance they taught us, then what was Jesus really pointing to? Jesus said something that would make most pastors deeply uncomfortable, something so radical that if their congregations truly understood it, the entire religious industrial complex would collapse overnight. When you pray, go into your inner room and shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. Your inner room, not your bedroom closet, not your church pew, not some physical location where you can hide from the world. The inner room of your being, the secret chamber of consciousness where no religious performance can reach, where no doctrine can penetrate, where no pastor or priest can mediate. In Solomon's temple, there was a sacred space called the Holy of Holies. Once a year, on the Day of Atonement, only the high priest could enter this inner sanctuary to commune directly with the divine presence. It was the most sacred space on earth, separated by a thick veil from the outer courts where common people gathered. But when Jesus died, something unprecedented happened. The veil was torn from top to bottom. Not from bottom to top, as if human hands had ripped it, but from top to bottom, as if God Himself had torn open the barrier. Jesus didn't just give you access to the Holy of Holies. He revealed that this sacred space, this direct access to the divine presence, exists within you. It always has. It always will. The great cosmic joke. You were looking outward to a God who dwells inward. You were seeking in temples built by hands what was already constructed in the depths of your own being. The secret place isn't secret because it's hidden from you. It's secret because it's hidden as you. It's the deepest truth of who you are beneath all the noise, all the programming, all the religious conditioning. Close your eyes right now. I'm serious. If you're driving, bookmark this and come back. But if you can, close your eyes. Now imagine shutting a door. Not a physical door, but the door of your awareness. Shut out all the noise, the shoulds, the musts, the religious rules. Shut out the voices telling you you're not good enough, not holy enough, not faithful enough. What remains when you shut out everything that isn't you? Feel that stillness. That's not emptiness. That's not loneliness. That's the secret place Jesus spoke of. That's the inner room where the Father waits, not as a distant deity, but as the deepest truth of your own being. If you've always felt like you don't belong in the religious crowd, if their worship feels empty and their prayers feel hollow, it's because you were never meant for their noise. You were called to this inner sanctuary. You were designed for this sacred solitude. But here's what's strange. Why did Jesus emphasize silence? Why not passionate pleas? Why not the eloquent prayers that impress congregations? Why not the spiritual performances that make others think you're holy? Because silence wasn't the end of His secret. It was the doorway into something even more radical. Here's what the Gospels reveal that most completely miss. Jesus had a pattern. Before every major miracle, before every demonstration of divine power, before every moment when heaven touched earth, there was prayer. But look closer. Read between the lines. What was He actually doing in those moments? The Father knows what you need before you ask Him. Stop. Think about that for a moment. If the Father already knows your needs, every one of them, before you even form the words, then what was Jesus' prayer really accomplishing? Information transfer? No. Persuasion? Absolutely not. Begging? Never. Jesus was doing something the religious world has completely lost. Alignment. Place your hand on your heart right now. Feel the rhythm that was given to you before you ever spoke a word, before you ever formed a prayer. That rhythm, that steady, faithful beating, that is prayer. That is the divine expressing through your physical form, keeping you alive, sustaining you every moment without you having to ask. Your heartbeat is God's prayer for you. Your breath is the Holy Spirit flowing through you. Your very existence is the Father saying yes to you every moment of every day. But Jesus took this even deeper. He didn't just align with what the Father was doing, He became what the Father was doing. And that's when the religious establishment got nervous. What if I told you that Jesus never actually wanted your prayers at all? He wanted something far more dangerous to religion, something that would make you completely independent of their systems. He wanted you to become the prayer. Before we unlock the next chamber, I need to speak to those of you who feel this awakening burning in your bones. Like this video as a signal fire. It is not a button press. It is an act of spreading the flame, a way of telling the hidden ones that the light still burns and they are not alone. Subscribe as a vow of remembrance. Every new soul that joins this path tells the machines of this age that this truth must not be buried, that it must be carried into the awareness of those still searching in the dark. And when you do, declare it in the comments with the words, "I am awakening." This is not just text. It is a signal to connect with those in the same wavelength like yours that are also awakening. Share this video as an offering. Each time you do, seeds are scattered into the souls who are waiting for the call, who are hungry for the living fire beyond religion's noise. Every action you take is more than engagement. It is a code, a whisper to the unseen declaring that send this light to the seekers, let the sleepers awaken. Now breathe deep. The next chamber does not offer more information. It opens the doorway to activation. Watch Jesus' life through different eyes. Really see what's happening. His entire existence was prayer in motion. When he touched the leper, that was prayer. When he forgave the adulteress, that was prayer. When he fed the hungry, blessed the children, washed the disciples' feet, that was prayer. Not the prayer of words, not the prayer of religious ritual, the prayer of embodiment. The prayer of being so aligned with divine love that every action becomes worship, every breath becomes communion, every moment becomes sacred. The ultimate inversion that religion fears most. Prayer is not something you say. Prayer is not something you do. Prayer is something you become. I and the Father are one. This wasn't theology. This wasn't a doctrine for seminary students to debate. This was the secret of living prayer revealed. Complete alignment, total unity, no separation between the human will and the divine will, no gap between earth and heaven, no distance between the seeker and the sought. And here's why this terrified the religious authorities then, and why it still terrifies them now. If you become the prayer, if you embody divine love, if you walk in complete alignment with the Father's will, you don't need their buildings, you don't need their mediators, you don't need their permission to access God. You are the access point. Let's experience this together. Right now, breathe with me. Not just the words, but the reality behind them. Silently, in the depths of your being, breathe this truth. I and the Father are one. Don't think it. Feel it. Let it resonate in your cells. Again, deeper now. I and the Father are one. One more time, let it become your heartbeat. I and the Father are one. Don't analyze what just happened. Don't let your mind dissect it. Just feel the resonance, feel the recognition. Something in you remembers this truth. If you're still watching, if something in you is awakening to this remembrance, it's not by accident. You were never meant for the shallow prayers of repetition and petition. You were designed for something far more magnificent. You were meant to embody the prayer itself, to become the answer to every longing, the healing for every wound, the love that the world is desperately starving for. But most people will never understand this. They're still looking outward, still reaching upward, still begging at heaven's door, like spiritual orphans who don't know they're already home. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason this truth was buried so deep that finding it feels like remembering a forgotten dream. The secret has been kept for a reason, and it's not the reason you think. Externalized prayer, the kind that reaches up to a distant God, serves a purpose, but not the purpose they told you. It keeps you dependent. It keeps you returning to their buildings week after week, tithing to their coffers, submitting to their authority. Think about it. If you truly understood that the kingdom of heaven is within you, that the Holy of Holies is your own consciousness, that you are the temple of the living God, what would happen to the religious industrial complex? It would crumble overnight. But inner prayer, living prayer, the prayer of embodiment that Jesus demonstrated, that makes you free, completely, radically, dangerously free. Free from needing their approval, free from their guilt and shame tactics, free from their endless fundraising campaigns for bigger buildings to house a God who was never confined to buildings in the first place. They taught you to reach upward because they needed you to believe God was distant. They taught you to beg because they needed you to believe you were unworthy. They taught you to repeat their formulas because they needed you to believe you couldn't access the divine directly. But Jesus revealed the opposite. Prayer isn't reaching up to heaven. Prayer is descending into the kingdom that was always within you. And here's the part that will make your spirit leap with recognition. You've always known this. Somewhere deep inside, beyond all the religious programming, you've always sensed that the real communion happens in the secret place, in the silence, in the depths of your own being where no human authority can reach. Every time organized religion felt empty to you, every time their prayers felt hollow, every time you walked out of a service feeling more distant from God than when you walked in, that wasn't your failure. That was your spirit recognizing counterfeit spirituality. If you've made it this far in this teaching, if something in you is resonating with these words, it's because you were never meant for spiritual mediocrity. You were never meant to be a spiritual consumer, sitting passively while others perform rituals on your behalf. You were meant for direct encounter, direct communion, direct embodiment of the divine nature that was always your birthright. But knowing this intellectually isn't enough. There's one more step, the step that transforms understanding into experience, knowledge into knowing, belief into being. Here's what they never taught you in Sunday school. Jesus didn't spend most of his time in prayer postures. He spent most of his time being the prayer. Every act of compassion was communion with the Father. Every moment of forgiveness was worship. Every healing touch was a direct transmission of divine love made manifest in the physical realm. Jesus didn't just pray for the hungry, he fed them, and that feeding was the prayer. He didn't just pray for the sick, he healed them, and that healing was the prayer. He didn't just pray for the outcasts, he embraced them, and that embrace was the prayer. This is why they tried to kill him. Not because he claimed to be God, many did that, but because he demonstrated that the divine nature was accessible to everyone, that every human being could become a living prayer, a walking miracle, an embodiment of heaven on earth. The mystics called it the prayer without ceasing that Paul wrote about. Not endless words, but a life so aligned with divine will that every breath becomes worship, every heartbeat becomes communion, every action becomes sacred service. We're going to experience this together right now, not as a mental exercise, but as a direct encounter with your true nature. Close your eyes. If you're somewhere you can't do this, bookmark this moment and come back when you can give it your full presence. Feel your breath. Don't change it, just notice it. This breath that's breathing you right now, this is the Holy Spirit, literally. The same word Jesus used for spirit, ruach, means breath. You are being breathed by the divine every moment. Now place both hands on your heart. Feel that faithful rhythm. This heart that has beaten billions of times without you ever having to ask it to, without you ever having to earn it, without you ever having to be worthy of it. This is the Father's love for you. Drumming steadily in your chest every moment of every day. Now, keeping your eyes closed, imagine standing up and walking through your day, but walking as this prayer. Every step powered by divine breath. Every heartbeat echoing the Father's love. Every word you speak carrying the resonance of heaven. Every touch you offer transmitting the healing presence of the living God. This isn't imagination. This isn't metaphor. This is who you actually are, beneath all the conditioning, all the religious programming, all the lies about your unworthiness. You're the prayer the world has been waiting for. Open your eyes. Look around you. Everything you see, every person, every challenge, every broken place is waiting for a living prayer to touch it. And if you've followed this teaching to this point, if something in you has awakened to this truth, then you are that living prayer. The question isn't whether God will answer your prayers. The question is whether you'll answer God's prayer for the world, which is you, walking in full awareness of who you really are. If you've made it this far, you need to understand something crucial about what just happened to you. You weren't just taught about prayer. You were initiated into a sacred rebellion that has been going on for 2,000 years. Every generation has had its hidden ones, the ones who remembered what religion tried to bury, the Gnostics who preserved the inner teachings, the mystics who chose direct experience over doctrine, the contemplatives who found God in silence rather than sermons. They were persecuted, burned as heretics, driven underground, their books banned, their names erased from history. All because they carried the same truth you just experienced, that the kingdom of heaven is within, that you are the temple of the living God, that prayer is not performance but embodiment. You are now part of that lineage. Whether you realize it or not, something has shifted in your consciousness. You can never unknow what you now know. You can never return to seeing prayer as begging a distant deity for favors. If you've made it to this moment, it's because you are not like the crowd. You were chosen to carry this hidden way, chosen to remember what the masses have forgotten, chosen to embody what religion has reduced to empty ritual. The world is entering a time of great awakening. The old systems are crumbling. People everywhere are walking away from religious institutions that no longer feed their souls. They're hungry for authentic spirituality. They're starving for direct encounter with the divine. And they're waiting for living prayers like you to show them the way, not through preaching or proselytizing, but through embodiment, through being so aligned with divine love that your very presence becomes a transmission of what's possible. So the question that remains is this: will you step into this calling? Will you walk as the prayer you were born to be? Will you join the sacred rebellion of those who choose direct communion over religious performance? Because if you're ready for that level of commitment, I have one final revelation that will seal this initiation and launch you into your true destiny as a living prayer. What I'm about to share with you has been the secret of every mystic, every saint, every person who has ever lived in continuous communion with the divine. There is a prayer that is not spoken with words. There is a communion that requires no religious formula. There is a way of being that transforms not just your relationship with God, but your understanding of who God actually is. It's the prayer of recognition. The moment you stop looking for God out there and recognize God in here, not as a belief, not as a concept, but as the living reality of your own deepest nature. Close your eyes one final time. Breathe deeply into the silence we've created together. Now, in the deepest chamber of your being, without speaking any words, simply recognize the presence that has been witnessing this entire teaching. The awareness that has been aware of your thoughts, aware of your emotions, aware of your breathing, aware of your heartbeat. That awareness, pure, unchanging, always present, that is not separate from the divine. That is the divine, expressing as your unique perspective, your unrepeatable way of being conscious. You are not a separate being trying to connect with God. You are God's way of experiencing this moment, this life, this reality. You are the divine dreaming of being human while never ceasing to be divine. Rest in that recognition, not as something you need to achieve, but as something you remember. Something that was always true and will always be true. We have reached the end of this chamber, But the true path does not end here. What has been stirred in you today must be carried, protected, and nurtured, or it will fade back into the noise of the world. That is why our private sanctuary exists, our private Facebook group. It is the hidden gathering place where the scattered ones find each other again. Inside, the conversation does not stop, the fire does not go out, and the remembrance deepens with every soul that joins. You will find the doorway in the description in the pinned comment. Step through, because no one awakens alone. And for those who are ready to root these teachings even deeper, we have prepared sacred companions for the journey. These are not products in the worldly sense. They are keys, guides, and soul maps designed to anchor the awakening inside your daily life, so that the flame you feel now does not flicker, but grows. Seekers who take them up find the path opens faster. The codes unlock with greater clarity, and the kingdom within becomes not just an idea, but a living experience. The path is calling. The kingdom is within. Step through the doorway and do not walk alone. Until we meet again, remember, the flame is inside you, and it must be carried forward.